Good morning. This topic is about overview of cellular responses to stress and noxious stimuli. So before that, we are going to learn about a normal structure of a cell. The normal cell is confined to fairly narrow range of function and structure by its state of metabolism, differentiation and specialization by constraints of neighboring cells and the availability of metabolic substrates. It is nevertheless able to handle physiological demands, maintaining a steady state called homeostasis. This is about a stellar response to stress and injury. Stress to a cell leads to intracellular adaptive response, which leads to cellular adaptation, which in turn leads to irregular cell injury and cell death. Intracellular adaptive response. The adaptive response may consist of an increase in size of cells and functional activity known as hypertrophy, or an increase in their number known as hyperplasia, or a decrease in the size and metabolic activity of cells known as atrophy, a change in phenotype of cells caused by external stimulus and can be reversible, which is known as metaplasia, transformative of a cell into an abnormal version of itself caused by an internal stimulus, which is reversible and known as dysplasia. So, when the stress is eliminated, the cell can recover to its original state without having suffered any harmful consequences. There's a chart for intracellular adaptive responses. And this table column is about the cellular response to a noxious stimuli. So, physiological stimuli, so increased demand, increased stimulation, which leads to hyperplasia and hypertrophy, decreased nutrients, which leads to decreased stimulation, leads to atrophy, chronic irritation, which may be about physical or chemical responses, leads to metaplasia. So, acute and transient reduced oxygen supply, which leads to acute reversible injury, and progressive and severe DNA damages leads to irreversible cell injury. So all these leads to cellular accumulations, calcifications, cell aging and cell death. Cell injury. So if the limits of adaptive responses are exceeded or if the cells are exposed to injurious agents or stress, deprived of essential nutrients or become comprised of mutations that affect essential cellular constituents, a sequence of events followed that is termed as cell injury. Cell injury is reversible up to a certain point, but if the stimulus persists or is severe enough from the beginning, the cell suffers irreversible injury and ultimately cell death. Adaptation, reversible cell injury, and cell death may be stages of progressive impairment following different types of insults. For example, in response to increased hemodynamic loads, the heart muscle becomes enlarged, a form of adaptation known as hypertrophy, and can even undergo injury. If the blood supply to the myocardium is compromised or inadequate, the muscle first suffers reversible injury manifested by certain cytoplasmic changes. Eventually, they suffer irreversible injury and dies. This is about the progressive stages of cellular responses to stress or stimulus. Cell death. Cell death, the end result of progressive cell injury, is one of the most crucial events in the evolution of disease in any tissue or organ. It may be caused due to ischemia, infections, or any toxins. Cell death is also a normal and essential process in embryogenesis, the development of organs, and the maintenance of homeostasis. Necrosis and apoptosis. There are two principal pathways of cell death: apoptosis and necrosis. Apoptosis is about a programmed cell death that is healthy and expected. In apoptosis, the cell actively destroys itself by shrinking and breaking into membrane bound pieces that are consumed by immune cells. Apoptosis helps the body get rid of damaged cells and prevents cancer. This is about necrosis, an accidental or unprogrammed cell death that can cause tissue death and interfere with body functions. In necrosis, the contents of the dying cells split out into surrounding tissues, which can trigger inflammation. Necrosis can cause the affected area to appear discolored, swell, and enlarge. So differentiation of apoptosis and necrosis is about apoptosis is characterized by the cell activity destroying itself, while necrosis is caused by damage from the cell's external environment. The key mechanism of apoptosis is endonuclease activation, which leads to break in the cell's DNA. The key mechanism of necrosis is cell membrane damage. Calcium deposition, metabolic derangements in cell and sublethal. Chronic injury may be associated with intracellular accumulation of a number of substances including protein, lipid, and carbohydrates. Calcium is often deposited at the sites of cell death, resulting in pathological calcification. Thank you.